For 2024, the GMC Acadia is now on its third generation, and it has gotten quite the glow up. In fact, it is much bigger than the generation it replaces. This, my friends, is a 2024 GMC Acadia Denali, priced at about $73,000 Canadian, or about $64,000 and change in the US. This comes pretty well equipped. Now, what's powering this vehicle? Is that complaining I hear? Because I'm sure people are going to be typing away in the comments vigorously, wearing out those keys saying that, oh, it's a 4-cylinder. But the rumors were true, folks. A couple years ago when the new Canyon Colorados were coming out, we knew that the rumor had been for the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, the Turbo Max would be trickling down through the entire lineup of mid-size SUVs, and sure enough, the rumors were true. That's the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine producing 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. Good numbers overall for a mid-size vehicle. And honestly, as I was driving around with this, I don't really need a V6. It's enough power to get around. Okay, maybe if you've got like 6 extremely heavy people in here, it might feel a little sluggish, but let's be honest, folks, the most part, this vehicle is going to be used for 1 or 2 people, maybe a couple kids in the back. The 4-cylinder is going to be plenty enough. And it's also extremely efficient, as we'll talk about when we take it on the road. Now, as I mentioned, this third generation has gotten quite a bit bigger, 10.6 inches longer than the second generation and 3.2 inches taller. This is a much bigger vehicle, replacing the old Acadia. Now, GM also says that you get 80% more cargo capacity behind the third row, which is important because, you know, when I looked at the previous generation Acadia, it was more of like a mid-size 2-row vehicle that just happened to have a third row that you could fold up. Whereas this midsize is now much more 3-row oriented, with more space in that third row and more cargo capacity overall. It really is like a small Yukon. And obviously, that's on purpose. The current generation GMC Sierra has a very distinctive front end, so now they're trying to copy that across the board. So the Acadia now has those C-shaped daytime running lights, which look very sharp. We also have an opening and closing sequence for those lights. So as you approach the vehicle or lock the car, the lights will have a pattern effect as you lock or unlock. It looks really cool. But I'd say the rear end is my favorite part of the new Acadia. They've replaced where the GMC badge normally goes in the center of the tailgate and put the Denali badging there, front and foremost, so that everybody knows you've bought the best of the best. But the GMC badge has now been moved to the bottom right corner, similar to those old school GMC trucks of generations past. If you remember the older original CK trucks, it would say GMC truck along the back of the tailgate in that position. So I don't know if GM did that as a nod to those older GMC trucks or if it just happens to be a coincidence, but regardless, I think it looks quite sharp. And also, this vehicle is finished in the new downpour metallic paint, sort of the signature color that comes on the 24 Acadia. I would say this is the color to go with. Too many Denalis are white or black. Let's get a little bit of color out there on the road and have something that's fun. Now, this vehicle also has the Denali Reserve package, kind of like a Denali Ultimate when it comes to the Sierras, but without quite as many features, as most of it does come standard. But it does add the performance suspension as well as these 22-inch nickel machined alloy rims. And when we jump inside, the Denali Reserve adds the 16-speaker Bose Performance Series speakers. I don't think we've actually seen those speakers used on other vehicles other than, say, Infiniti products up until now, but they do sound pretty good. The interior here is completely different. Nothing from the old generation is here, maybe just the window switches, but even that has been changed up a little bit. The pièce de résistance in the middle here is the 15-inch infotainment system in a portrait style. But I have to feel that somebody at the GMC Design Lab was looking at a Mustang Mach-E interior and said, you know what? I like that. Let's do exactly that. Because it is obviously the same portrait style, but we have the same sort of volume control in pretty much the same position it is on the Mustang Mach-E. And when you turn it, it will pop up to show you that you're changing the volume around it. So yeah, maybe it's going to be a design trend we're going to be seeing. Obviously, big infotainments taking up all the buttons are something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of as time goes on, but whether we'll see the volume switch on the screen, this is the second vehicle we've seen so far that has it. Now, we do have a couple physical buttons for the HVAC controls, but they require the infotainment to be working. So there are some buttons to turn on and off the controls, as well as the temperature and fan speed, but it's all displayed through the screen. So if the screen doesn't work, I think you're going to be in trouble. We have an 11-inch driver cluster screen, and there's a number of different profiles or different themes you can use. One of them is a map, which is nice. But the second one, sort of the minimalistic one, actually removes the gas gauge. It just tells you how much range you have. So when I picked up this vehicle, the gas tank wasn't full, because the screen doesn't show you. You have to go into more of the advanced view to actually see the gas gauge. Aside from that, though, it works pretty well. There's a couple modes there, and much like we've seen with the new infotainment system from GM, these Android-based Google built-in ones, you can't really scroll through any of the menus. You have to go into the infotainment and pick what you want on the screen. So I've got my trip computer there. That's about it. So it makes it a little bit more complicated. I don't know how many people are switching through those. I do personally do that myself. I like to switch on my car between the range, and then I always have the speed up there. So I think it's going to depend on what type of driver you are. Now we have 360-degree cameras, the rear video mirror camera, which works very well, tri-zone automatic climate control, heated and ventilated front seats with driver memory and exit options. The second row seats are only heated though. There's still no ventilation in the second row. I think that's a miss. It's a miss on something like the Escalade, and I think it's going to be a miss here. As a lot of other vehicles now are starting to add that the second row passenger should have more or less the same features that you get up front. But the second row seats do slide forward. They also recline, and there's also an easy entry mode button that you can push to actually pop the seat up a little bit. So if you do have a car seat in the back seat, it might make it a little bit easier for you to get into the third row. Plus, because the second row is captain chairs, you could theoretically walk through the middle if it made it a little bit easier for you. But there's not much to excite in the second or third rows. Third rows, really, there's just USB-C ports, one on either side, plus two vents in the ceiling to help with airflow a little bit back there. So I think that, especially by GM saying that this is a bigger vehicle, they have more room in the third row, they have more cargo capacity, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more creature comforts for that third row. Maybe some vents built into the C-pillars would have been nice. Plus, there's no side window sunshades. Again, another miss on this vehicle, especially at this price point. If GM really wants to consider this brand to be a premium brand, then you're going to have to add some of those features, because a lot of the luxury cars and non-luxury vehicles are offering side window sunshades, not only in the second row, but now a lot of them in that third row as well. So small misses there, but for the most part, the interior here is completely different from what we've seen on other GM vehicles, especially the Denali vehicles. This does feel top-notch. Nice premium materials throughout. It is mostly soft throughout. I'm pretty happy with it, and I like the design overall. We've got some stitching, not only on the door cards, but the armrests and the seats. And the seats are quite comfortable as well. So good job, GM. Overall, a very improved vehicle over the previous generation Acadia. But let's see how this vehicle drives. We're going to take it on the road, talk to you about all of those, as well as how the fuel economy stacks up compared to the competition. So let's hit the road on our test drive. All right, so before we get into the meat and potatoes of our test drive, let's talk about the fuel efficiency when it comes to the Acadia. One of the nice things about GM vehicles is the ability to turn the four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive system off. So I had the vehicle in touring mode, which is sort of their normal mode, and two-wheel drive, so front-wheel drive only. We completed our 100-kilometer test loop in 9.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which is pretty impressive for a large vehicle such as this. Now, how does it stack up? We drove the Toyota Grand Highlander with the max hybrid engine. That only did 9.7 liters per 100 kilometers, but I do feel that it might be a little bit bigger vehicle. I'd say they're pretty similar overall, but that didn't do quite as well. The Infiniti QX60, right? If GM really wants this to be a premium vehicle, Infiniti would be a good competitor. That completed our test loop in 9.3 liters per 100 kilometers, so pretty much right on the same number. The Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe, the plug-in hybrid, somehow only did 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers. Not very good overall. And then the Mazda CX-90, the mild hybrid that we drove, that completed it in 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers. So that was actually really, really good. I'm quite impressed with the numbers on that. And again, the CX-90 would be pretty similar in terms of size to this. You're going to be getting the same kind of interior space. Now, let's look at some B-roll of me getting into the third row. As I mentioned, there's a button. There's actually two buttons per seat, one on the side of the seat and then one on the back of the seat for the second row to be able to push it out of the way. And you can see it moves out of the way pretty easily. A big, huge guy like me getting into the back wasn't too much of a problem. Put the seat back. Yeah, I could fit. I wouldn't really want to be back there, but you're really not going to be putting a guy like me in the third row. Even if you're carpooling with somebody, you got to be a little courteous and understand that big guys like me don't go in that third row. But if you got kids, you got smaller adults, whoever it may be, they should be able to fit fine. As I mentioned, there's a USB-C port, little roof vent for your air. and then like some, not even really cup holders, it's more like a little storage area, but I guess you could put a cup in there too. So you got a little bit of stuff back there. Overall, rear cargo space, as I mentioned, pretty good overall. You've got a little storage area underneath the floor. That's where the block heater cable is for this vehicle. And then aside from that, though, I mean, you can fold all the seats flat if you wanted to have even more cargo capability. But in this configuration with the 7-passenger seating, I think it's plenty enough. So I'm quite happy with the overall space on this. It does feel like a big vehicle, though. I mean, I'm driving on the road here, and I do feel almost like I'm driving a Yukon. Now, the Yukon's a little bit bigger, obviously taller, wider, longer, all of that. But you do have a very similar driving feel to that. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They want big vehicles. They feel that big equals safe, even though it isn't really the case. But you get that feeling with this vehicle. And overall, it is smooth, and the overall ride is quite nice. Now, they say that this is the performance suspension. I think that it's just a little bit better suspension over the regular one that you're getting, because it is pretty smooth overall. There's nothing like performance about it, sporty or anything, which you don't really want with a vehicle like this. You want it to be smooth and comfortable. So if you've got some people in here, you should be more than happy with a relatively full load of people. So nice and smooth. Interior is quiet. Don't really hear too much on the outside road, right? So good insulation on here, good active noise cancellation. For the most part, I haven't had any issues with that. And then, like I said, the performance is pretty good also. We do have a number of drive modes. Got tow haul, got normal, sport, off-road, snow and ice. So, you know, if we put it into sport mode here, and we give it a little bit of a rip, yeah, I mean, it's nothing exciting, folks. We're not expecting this to be an exciting vehicle. It's meant to be a comfortable, smooth driving vehicle, and that's exactly what this does. I have been pretty happy with the overall performance. Like I say, going to this 4-cylinder, I know a lot of people are going to be complaining. Tons of people typing away in the comments, but there's going to be people that haven't driven this engine, and so far it seems to have been pretty reliable for GM. There haven't been any real issues with it. Talking to people at service departments and dealerships, they don't really see the vehicles come in aside for regular service, regular maintenance on them. So I think it's a win. And we're going to continue seeing this. Vehicles will start to have smaller engines. Everybody's doing it. We all need to meet stricter emissions guidelines set out by global governments. So it's inevitable that these engines will become smaller. And until GM gets electrification going, which is something that we spent a little bit of time talking about a few months ago with the GM's, the ghosts of GM's past, talking about how they really were ahead of the game when it came to hybrid technology, and then they went, oopsies, and gave up on it. I always think that these vehicles could be so much better with a hybrid. Even a small hybrid attached to this would make it better. So I think that that would have been a nice plus on here. A plug-in would be killer, but as the way that it is, I think it's a pretty good, compelling vehicle. And if I were to compare this really with the Toyota Grand Highlander, that's the one that I think back to the most when I'm driving this. It's big, it's boxy, it feels comfortable. The two of them are pretty darn close in terms of overall size, I'd say. And yeah, there are some compelling reasons why you're going to want to go with this. I like the looks of this. I think it looks really sharp. It's sexy, especially in this color combination. I do like it quite a bit. I mean, when you see a Denali, you know it's the best, right? When you see the Toyota, you know it's reliable. There's nothing wrong with it, but they don't have anything that really stands out in terms of that marketing value. And that's really what the Denali brand has. That's why so many people buy a Denali, because of that status you get when you buy one. And I know our European viewers aren't going to understand it, but trust me, here in Canada and the United States, Denali means something. And here we go. I'll leave you with this. Super Cruise, one of the few vehicles you can get Super Cruise on now. You can see a little bit here, maybe in the B-roll too, the steering wheel does shake a bit. So I drove Super Cruise home my entire way when I was driving this back from Toronto, and it worked. We have automatic lane changing now, which is great. It'll do it for you. It rumbles the seat to let you know it's going to be doing it, but it worked out very well. I had no issues with the system, but I do notice that the steering wheel is kind of like, I don't know. It's like it's a little nervous as it's driving. It's shaking as it goes along. So, there it is. It's just kind of like, So aside from that, though, the little nervous Super Cruise steering wheel here, it's worked out great. So it's nice to have a road like this. We're lucky here in St. Thomas. We've got a little expressway that is Super Cruise enabled, so I can show you guys features like that. But yeah, more vehicles are getting it. Cadillac has them for the most part across the board. Almost all the vehicles now have it. We're starting to see it across other GM vehicles. So it's nice that the Acadia has it as an option. And we've talked talked about it before, in order for Super Cruise to work, not only do you have to pay to get it in the vehicle, but then you're paying per month, not only for Super Cruise, but you also need an active OnStar connection with a data connection. You need all of it. So you do get it for a couple of years when you first start off with the vehicle, but after that, you gotta pay for it. So keep that in mind before you're getting set up with it, but it does work well. It is, as far as I'm concerned, the best hands-free driving system. It works. I haven't had any significant issues with it, especially the more recent vehicles. They have been pretty flawless, so I do like it. But that's about it when it comes to the 2024 GMC Acadia Denali as the vehicle drives along here for us. If you have any questions about this vehicle, as always, we are in the comments. I do try to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. So if you have questions about this vehicle or anything in general, you want to know what we're doing here on Test Drive, you can ask away, and you can also subscribe to our channel. You can become a member, help support us on a monthly basis. Join our Discord channel as well, so you can chat with us directly and also support us with our new merch store. All of that is in the description and everything below here on YouTube. But until next time, we appreciate you watching, and take care.